Hello, Space Junkies, and welcome to episode number 155 of What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I am your host, Scott Butman, and joining me today is my original podcast co-pilot, Mr. Derrick Marsh. Derrick, how's it going? Happy holidays.
Yes, happy festive holidays. We are in the middle of what is the holiday season between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And what do we hold? But more Star Wars, hooray, as it is kind of a tradition. Obviously, we still prefer our movies if we ever get a movie at this point around May. But, you know, they can drop all the streaming shows that they want during December, and I'm all game for that. So.
Yeah, totally. And you know who else is all game for streaming Star Wars in December, or really any time of the year? And that is my original Wookiee co-pilot, our very own Gooey Chewy, Mr. Dave Filclone, the man of 1,000 nicknames. It's Nathan Miracle. Nathan, how are you?
Hey, this is the part where I'm supposed to be all, oh, you're cold? But despite it being December, it's actually like 60 degrees outside today.
Yeah,
we hit 65.
It's not bad today.
Now, the past couple of days, it's been like 30. So I don't know who decided the weather, but they're just throwing darts at the temperature.
Look, man, ever since Mother Nature's been mad at us, and ever since the torrential hurricane that nearly destroyed our city over here in North Carolina, I'm not surprised at all when the weather is complete and total chaos.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see that the dome is still standing. Yay!
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the architect tried to sell us on this kit by being all, and it's hurricane-proof. Now, this was 2022. And so I naively said, when would I ever have to worry about a hurricane in North Carolina?
Now.
Yeah.
Now is the answer.
Yeah. The answer is now. Now. This is now. Now is here. Anyway... But, we're here today to talk about Star Wars Skeleton Crew, which is a show about kids that defy their parents and get into a whole lot of trouble. So I thought that in keeping with that theme, I'd bring on my youngest son, Joseph, joining the podcast for the first time in many, many episodes. Joseph, how's it going, and why is Neel your screen name?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to talk about some Skeleton Crew tonight. But I chose the name Neel because... I've been getting kind of a little bit attached to Neel and his little family because they're kind of
really good. Yeah.
Because I think he's the same race as that guy who was playing like the BDM at Jabba's place.
Well,
unfortunately, he is officially not the same race. Max Rebo, who plays the BDM at Jabba's palace, is an I don't know. It's
he's a cousin.
Actually, I could.
Orleans.
Anyway, he is an Ortulian.
Are you asking what the instrument itself
is?
Yeah, go for it, Nathan. I'm sure you can look it up while I explain to my son and crush his hopes and dreams that no, that is not an Ortulan.
Red
Neel
ball
and his
jet organ, a jet with two teeth.
Red ball jet organ. Good times. Anyway, unfortunately, for some reason, Neel and his family are officially not the same species. There was an article about this before the show came out on StarWars.com.
Oh, okay.
Which was super weird to me that they took the time to say, no, he's not an Ortulan.
Yeah.
Or
why even
I
worry
was disappointed about that. But it's Star Wars. Fans will fight over it if they don't specify. So
I mean, we're not talking, number of wives from Ki Adi Mundi or anything, but still.
And not even that, it's Disney Star Wars. So that brings fans that want to fight more.
It does, sadly.
So they took the high road and just said, nope, he's not. He's its own species, even
preemptively
95% the same. So, but again, this is a large galaxy, just like we're 97% related to apes, but we're not apes, so this would be the same concept.
Well, and in Star Wars, there's so many different humans, like Corellians, not Andorians.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, sorry.
Andorians.
Alderaanians. There's lots of different planets with humans, so
Actually, Nathan is going to get to give us another speech of these are two distinct species, despite looking very similar, when we talk about episode 2 of Skeleton Crew. So let's go ahead and jump on into it, guys. We will do our traditional 5 questions, but we're going to do them tonight in this episode of the podcast for both episode 1 and episode 2 of Skeleton Crew, since essentially they kind of ran back to back as almost like an old school pilot movie for a 1970s or 1980s television series. That then later they would chop up into 2 halves, each 1 hour episodes, although our episodes for Skeleton Crew are not 1 hour long, but, roughly.
They would be if there was
same
commercials.
concept. That's true, that's true.
Yeah.
And I guess you could say someday in the future, when Disney Plus either, syndicates them or goes back and adds commercials for some, commercial option for the streaming service, then they will be an hour long, and there'll be like 3 or 4 commercial breaks.
Well, they already have commercials with Hulu.
Yes, that's right. You're right.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's probably just maybe even next year.
There are Disney Plus streaming options with commercials.
Yeah, good call, son. Good call. Right. So there you go. If you had the commercial breaks, you're probably looking at an hour for an episode. So the first episode of Skeleton Crew was This Could Be a Real Adventure, and we get a really nice beginning here. We'll just sort of go around and let everybody give their initial thought before we jump into the 5 questions for these 2 episodes. And that is a nice beginning here that shows this series, to me, while it's being sold as being about the kids and kind of like Stranger Things in Star Wars, I mean, we even have kids on bikes. But to me, it makes it seem like this is the space pirate series because we have a very piratey opening with a nice, good, like hijacking space battle thing happening. So I was happy to see it. Joseph, what are your overall thoughts about the 2 episode premiere?
I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed the fact that John Watts was able to do the direction for the project because I had a good time watching the Tom Holland movies. I thought they were good. I enjoyed watching Homecoming. I had a great time. That movie, especially because the chemistry between Tom Holland and Michael Keaton. I liked Vulture as a villain, and I liked the way Michael Keaton was able to bring him out more. But watching this show, it really made me think about Stranger Things a lot more than I would think about. But on top of that, episode 2 itself was pretty good. I like most of that episode. Episode 1 was a good introduction for the show. You get to learn each and every character. Like, they didn't linger on too much, I feel like, as they did with like previous Star Wars shows. And the way they were able to set up how the story is going to be told was pretty good.
Yeah. All right, cool. Derrick, what are your initial thoughts about both these episodes?
So, I was happy that I felt like, based off the trailer, I would say probably 60 to 70% of the trailer was really the first couple of episodes, which is exciting. Because I was afraid, as most trailers, they give away too much. And so far, obviously, I was excited, right? And this is definitely getting that, Star Wars universe, but you got, you mentioned Stranger Things. We've talked about Goonies, E.T., Hook, everything vibes along with the Star Wars universe. And I will definitely say after these first 2 episodes, there's a little bit of quote unquote violence and stuff like that, but it was no different than kind of the late 80s, early 90s PG kids movies that we would see, right? I mean, you kind of see some blasts and a person falls, right? They didn't do any, blood close-ups or anything too crucial. So definitely, going to be seeing the rest of this if it's going to be interesting for kids or not. I definitely think it was geared towards the 7 to 10-year-olds based off the actors. So, but I mean, for once, this isn't like Star Wars Resistance, right? Like, we can enjoy it as well for adults. So, but anyways, that's just the first.
I don't mind telling you guys, Star Wars Resistance. I fell asleep during a few episodes.
You were the sacrificial lamb for it.
I would blame you, but I can't.
And it's not like so far corny or really mind numbing like the Lego Star Wars stuff is. Like the specials are pretty good, but sometimes when they do this off ball build your galaxy Star Wars stuff, like or the weird whatever it was, the Peacemakers or whatever series they had, it was just really difficult to do that. Not to say that Star Wars Legos isn't fun, but this isn't something that you really have to struggle to watch as an adult. So again,
Right.
super excited the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, because
Cool.
I
All
feel
right.
like watching that, it's not really targeted for the 11, 12 or whatever you said. Because I also think it's for adults as well with that John Watts Spider-Man Homecoming aspect.
Yeah. Watts as a EP and writer, that was a really good choice. He's taken some advanced concepts and made it easy to understand, and the kids don't have to get every last reference for them to enjoy the story. But for people like me, Nathan, and Derrick, who get every last Star Wars reference and then some, we're like, oh, this is so cool. So yeah. All right, Mr. Miracle, your initial thoughts for episodes 1 and 2.
I like that we get every last reference and then some because we make up our own references that they never
That's right.
intended. But
Yes.
we do, so I can't argue that we don't do that. And Star Wars fans in general do that. We're not the only ones. If you look at any of the big content producers for Star Wars, they're definitely coming up with connections that it's like, I don't know that that was intended, but it's there. So that's fine. I agree with you guys. It's been a great couple episodes. I've really enjoyed it. Yes, it is targeted at a younger audience, but there's a way to do shows that are targeted towards a younger audience and still have them be entertaining for adults. And that's what I found that this was. There's also a way to do shows targeted to younger audiences that aren't interesting for adults, and that's what you get with Resistance. Sorry, it's not bad for what it is, but it is not for adults.
It isn't Rebels.
It is not Rebels. It is
No, definitely not.
Nothing.
I don't think.
well below Rebels.
Yeah, I don't think that we will see a
Resistance,
live.
not Skeleton Crew.
Yeah. I don't think that we will see a live action follow up to Star Wars Resistance like we did with Ahsoka season 1 and being a live action follow up to Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah. And there's
live action Sabine, live action Ahsoka, live action Ezra. Come on, it was awesome. Anyway,
yeah, there are some
Hera.
interesting characters and concepts in Resistance, but not enough to justify a live action. But Skeleton Crew, that's what we're here to talk about. And
yeah,
I
totally.
So my favorite part is probably the fact that they pulled the wool over my eyes in episode 1. I did not realize that this was a planet cut off from the rest of the galaxy until they got into outer space and they're like, what are these? Stars? We've never seen these before.
Yeah.
Wait
yeah,
a
that
minute.
was cool.
Whoa. Because clearly they know about Jedi and Sith. And I thought that they had heard legends of Luke Skywalker and that sort of thing, but apparently not. They're their own isolated planet.
Well, they may know who Luke is. They definitely know who the New Republic is because at essentially career day, Chicky Poo came in and started talking about it.
She talked about Republic. She did not ever say New.
That's interesting.
Yeah, which I did not catch at first. I assumed that she was from the New Republic, but
Does it say
If-
this
never
after
if they-
episode 3?
If they're trying to go that route, Nathan, that this planet doesn't even know about the Clone Wars and the Republic has fallen, that'd be really confusing with the opening paragraphs that talk about the New Republic. But you could be right.
Well, I think they're finding out about the New Republic over the course of the season. So we've got our 4 kids who don't know anything, and they're learning about all it. The pirate stuff, all the pirates know about the New Republic.
Well,
Yeah, no, I guess I meant if you're trying to say that the government of At Attin doesn't know about the New Republic.
The government might. The citizenry doesn't seem to.
and there's 2 things, and you're right, where it could be right, that's where we're under the premise right now of how much of this world is as basically the eyes, the wool pulled over their eyes and stuff like that from covering. But you could also look at it. I assumed when they never really got to see what stars truly looked like, because the barrier that they talked about, I just assumed was like a fake atmosphere, kind of thinking of it like almost Spaceball Z, where they actually have like an actual ozone
The big
layer.
dome.
Yes. And
The air shield.
or almost Truman Show, where they can like manipulate the weather. You know what I'm saying? So they never see what the true sky looks like, to your point. So it could be one of two things, where they keep them that naive, but I almost felt like that was just, they can create this perfect world, which is part of the reason why so many people want to go there, right? Because of the stories of this treasure and this, bountiful planet, because like it never rains, for example, right? Because they can manipulate the weather. They have some other type of power that's going to be, besides obviously, old Republic credits. But to your point, I mean, how do they have the old Republic credits still, right? So is it just they're still stuck back in that time, right? So it's a good premise. Obviously, that's part of, one of the things they have us hooked of, like, okay, what is all this about besides the kids getting lost?
Yeah, it asks me a question that I don't know the answer to, and that intrigues me. And that's why that's my favorite part of
also
the
gives
show
me
so
a
far.
question too.
Yeah, Joseph, you were asking about, is this show set after Return of the Jedi? And it is. Officially, it's been said, this is during the same era as the Mandalorian series, in articles that were previews for Skeleton Crew. And then also the opening paragraphs, I won't say crawl because it's not an opening crawl, it doesn't move, but the words that appear on screen at the beginning of episode 1, which is "This could be a real adventure," start out with talking about how the New Republic is trying to instill order across the galaxy after the Empire has fallen, and but there's still major problems with piracy. So that's why I also had the feeling that this was going to be the space pirate show. And nothing in the first 2 episodes has dissuaded me from this opinion that this is the space pirate
Well,
show.
it is. Plus the one pirate. Plus the one pirate's in it too. So
there's a bunch of pirates.
Fane.
But
Fane.
Vane.
No, but he
Vane
means Vane from Star Wars: The Mandalorian.
from Manda. Yeah. Which I think Vane was introduced in The Mandalorian to be a character in this show to help establish the timeline. So that if you've watched Mandalorian, this is happening around the same time because this character is in both.
Well, and plus it also helps like establish like kind of like, okay, he's a coward, but at least he's a, kind of sneaky backstabbing. Like he's an
pirate. Opportunistic pirate. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He's our Wish version of Hondo Anaka.
That's it. Hondo Anaka from Timu. All right, so Nathan, your favorite thing was that it asks you this weird question about, are we talking New Republic or Old Republic as far as the citizenry is concerned, right?
Yeah, and that gives me a reason to tune in next week.
Absolutely. All right, Joseph, what was your favorite thing about these 2 episodes?
For the first one, when we found out that the kids didn't realize what stars were, I thought that was kind of interesting because going along with what Derrick said earlier, how they're kind of set back in this old-timey area. But that also brings up another question too, kind of like, if they know about Jedis and Sith and whatever, why would they make fun of Wim for wanting to be that? When if they know that they exist, that there are these great heroes and stuff.
Yeah. Maybe it's kind of like when you tell your friends you want to grow up to be a race car driver, and they all just laugh in your face because they don't think you can do it.
Or like an astronaut.
Right.
But notice that all of the human jobs, the people-centered jobs, like being a teacher, being a bus driver, things where you interact with other humans, those were all done by droids. And
security droids. Yep. No cops, but
droid.
Security droids. Yep.
And the thing that everybody wants to be is an analyst, which, I mean, I wanted to be an accountant from an early age, so I don't have much room to talk here, but I understand that I'm the exception. Yeah, most people don't dream of moving numbers around in spreadsheets
Oh,
on our
may-
world.
may-
They do on
may-
this.
maybe Disney did their homework and did a poll of how many Star Wars fans were watching, and maybe a majority of them were analysts. So they figured we're going to at least appease 20% of the audience automatically.
Oh, man.
Yeah, actually, they polled me. They said they weren't asking anyone else. Like, what age did you
Wow.
decide to come into town?
A majority of one. All right, Derrick, what was your favorite thing about these 2 episodes?
Just one. It did so far. It did once they got off the planet, which was great with Smee, who's my favorite robot
Yes,
now.
yes,
Yeah, that is cool.
SN33 was great.
Mr. Smee.
So I'm hoping that obviously they can fix him come episode 3 and he comes back. So obviously my favorite character so far. But 2, once they got off and they went to the pirate place, I can't remember the name of it. Anyways, the outpost, just the visuals of it, and it felt very, as I mentioned, it felt very Hook, right? It felt very like I could see this place being real, but at the same time, it felt fantasy. It felt like, okay, where they're trying to take Star Wars and modernize it a little bit, especially when we got this, Atna and Atna, whatever it's pronounced, where it almost like we kind of mocked it. It's like I almost felt like I'm watching like an 80s movie, right? Like where they got the whole residential area line up and all these homes and going all this. There's all this landscape and rural, the suburbs of Indiana and all that stuff on like Stranger Things. But once they left that planet, which again could be a side story of why it's like that, and that'll keep us interested. It did feel like Star Wars, but it felt, like I said, a more modern tale of it, where it did feel whimsical again. Like, oh, this seems interesting, right? So if I was a kid, like this would be like really like how they should have done Galaxy's Edge. But at the same time, it felt very like, for as an adult, like, oh, this kind of brings me back to watching Star Wars when they go to Mos Eisley, right? Or you go to Cloud City and you see these places, and it was kind of like, okay, this is cool. So I really like that about that so far. And just so far, it's a very fun, definitely kids telling of their tale. Again, I don't want to say a kid's story, but I meant like it's done so far a very well job of trying to portray, again, that kind of coming of age type movie. Or show that we've seen that, like I said, we're so accustomed to from an 80s feel, or even some 90s stuff that I'm really excited, like I said, from that, but really setting the tone with these first 2 episodes. I thought they nailed it out of the park.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the I'm going to do 2 favorite things because or 2 what did you like best because there was 2 episodes. My overall favorite thing is that Stranger Things Goonies vibe. It's epic. When Jude Law was doing the rounds to promote the show a few months ago, he often referred to it as a very Amblin production, which Amblin is the production company that made Goonies and other, kid caper movies back in the 1980s. So you had to be pretty inside politics or inside baseball for Hollywood in the 1980s to understand the Amblin reference there. But he was absolutely right. They nailed it. This felt like it came out the same summer that Goonies did, right? And my second so that was my overall favorite thing. I loved how in episode 1, This Could Be a Real Adventure, that we see Wim, the main child. So his dad is the one who's the analyst, and he gets in trouble for missing the big important SAT test, basically. He is so into those adventure tales that, Joseph, you mentioned about the Jedi and the Sith, that he has a book that he constantly reads about it. But I love that it isn't a tablet. It's not a touchscreen, because Star Wars doesn't do that. Star Wars is analog. Star Trek is digital. So you can't have things like touchscreens in Star Wars. And they didn't. They gave him the little flippy, almost Viewmaster, analog, handheld, e-reader, basically.
Yeah,
because
it's like the same
he never
thing Yoda had.
swipes. Yes, exactly. He doesn't swipe or tap or anything like that. He's got a button. He's got several buttons, and it's all clickety flip, clickety flip. And as a writer and a guy who does words and stories for a living, I love the idea that this physical media is still his thing, and the kid just loves it. It's like the world's biggest choose your own adventure book. I hope they make that thing, because I would buy like 2 of them. One for me to keep and one to give to you or your brother, depending on which one would actually read it. The second thing that I liked over in episode 2, which is titled "Far Beyond Way Out Past the Barrier." I liked the part where they get to Port Borgo, which is the pirate base, Derrick, and the cat girl is there doing what cat girls would do to get paid, and then she notices the children and like runs over to them to help them. But the first thing she asks is not "Are you okay?" or "Are you lost?" First, she asks them, "Are you children?" Because, I mean, there's lots of alien races out there. Perhaps that is what an adult of their race looks like, right? And she's obviously never seen anyone quite like them. Between Fern and her overall, tough girl vibe, and then KB with her visor set, the cat girl has never seen them, so she finds out whether they are children. And when she finds out that they are children, she tries to help them. So she is a cat girl with a heart of gold, which is an entirely different kind of trope that I never thought I would see in a Star Wars show. But I'm happy that we got it. Now, we have had that trope, which shall not be further explained in front of my son, in some comic books for Star Wars. But yeah, it was pretty cool to see that, and I liked adding that extra layer of definition to this particular area here at Port Borgo, and then the concept of, well, maybe these are not children. Maybe that's just what their adults look like.
Those must be the miners.
Yes, the miners.
No, not miners. Miners.
Miners. All right, let's move on to question number 2. What did you like least about these episodes? And Joseph, we'll let you go first this time as our special guest. What did you dislike the most?
Honestly, the way they were trying to I guess kind of like the horror aspect, but not really. Like trying to like get that like jump scare on you. I felt those were kind of like bland. Could have been a little bit better. Because especially when they got into the ship for the first time and they turned on all that power, I was expecting that to happen.
And when we saw Smee, or SM-33, when we saw Smee, the robot there, almost like he's a skull hanging off the things, you knew he was going to come to life.
Almost like it's called Skeleton Crew for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Nathan, and then for the second episode, I'm gonna be honest. That entire scene when they were at the what's it called, like the starport area,
Port Borgo,
I didn't really like it. I'm not gonna lie.
Too much.
Yeah, either that or just wasn't enough. Like since they were there, I wanted like at least more combat than we already got. But at the same time, they are just children.
Yeah. It would be weird if they like started grabbing blasters and cutlasses and going at it as kids.
Well, not for Fern.
Well, true. She got that gun, didn't she? What the heck? Anyway.
Actually,
right.
I stabbed your captain and ripped out her guts.
Yeah.
So I'm the captain now.
Look at me. Look at me. I'm the captain now. All right. Nathan, what did you dislike the most about these?
I have a hard time coming up with something that I dislike about these, so I'm going to just steal from somebody else. I was in a Discord server earlier today, and somebody asked, "Hey, is anybody doing anything interesting today?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to do a podcast about Skeleton Crew," and put in spoilers. I liked it, and somebody responded to me that they didn't particularly enjoy the first 2 episodes because of how exposition heavy they were. Now, personally, I didn't really feel that way, but I can kind of see where they're coming from. There was a lot of exposition, especially in the first episode. There was not much action. So if that's what you come to Star Wars to see, the first episode didn't deliver that. Now, personally, that's not really what I come to Star Wars to see. I like some action, but I also like some
good writing.
Yeah, good writing. not in total agreement with this person, but I can understand where they're coming from. So I'm not going to tell them that they're wrong. They just have a slightly different opinion than I do.
All right then. Derrick, what did you dislike?
Well, I mean, the overarching, I've got a couple minor or a couple other ones, but the big one that's as usual, right, is like we get like a 53-minute first episode and then like a 30-minute second episode, and I
Yeah.
hate that. I hate that. I hate that. Either and I understand how they cut it off for each episode. I get that, but episode 2, and I'm actually with Joseph on this part, is they could have added a bit more to that scene to just be more involved with it, like give us some more character growth or give us a little bit more like funny type them trying to escape the pirates, rather than we just run a few minutes and we run into a couple things, Smee comes out, then he gets shot, and that's it, right? It's like they could have given us a bit more there to get us getting closer to the 45-minute episode that we want, because again, that pisses me off when I got to wait a whole week for literally a 30-some minute episode. And it's not even a full 30-some minutes because you've got credits, you've got recap, you've got an intro. So you're lucky if you get 25 minutes. And I'm like, okay, that's like television. But again, you're spending all this money, you're filming stuff, make it fit in, put in something, like plan those episodes out ahead of time to understand how much of what you need to shoot for, and then go back from there. Right. So especially since they did 20 gazillion reshoots anyways, but that's just an overarching thing that we've had issues with Disney streaming altogether. So my biggest gripe with this so far is that I don't like Wim, because they're making him really, really dislikable in my sense, because you look at what he's going through and it's like, okay, I want to understand the kid. Right. He's obviously lost his mother. He's being raised in a single parent, which is probably the one that few kids aren't in that area where it's a single parent. Obviously, his dad doesn't give two about him because he's always working. And you can understand why he doesn't want to be an analyst, right? Even though that's what he's destined to be in this society. He wants
Right.
to be off in adventures, and I can respect that. But then he goes off and does things so forcefully to go on this adventure that I don't like that. Like, he's literally the cause of the reason why they're doing it, rather than they could have made him kind of the, like, I want to do adventures, but I'm not going to be the idiot or the person that just deliberately causes issues amongst my friends and I. Like, I just happen to have clumsily or something activate the thing, rather than let me think about this. Oh, screw everyone else. I'm going to hit the
Yeah.
button and go off. And then it's just continuing doing that throughout the first episode and a half. I just don't like that. Like, I want to understand the kid and I want to give him some grace, but he's really just on my nerves, being what I would consider a bad kid. Like, even the femme is the girl, like, you could understand where she's coming from a little bit, because her mom's the, whatever you want to say, arrogant prick supervisor of the city, right? And she's very, and she's just trying to, be independent. She may not be the best at everything, but she definitely wants to come off like, so I get her character. Obviously, KB we get because she just wants to be accepted. Neel is just the warm, fuzzy, likable guy that just wants to get home, right? And he's dragged along here. So, like, I get all the characters, but Wim, just like I said, the way they've gotten me on him, like, I'm not on his side right now. I'm like, well, they're probably going to die because of him, right? Now, they're obviously not going to, but at the same time, it's like, well, you really pushed so hard for that. And it just, like I said, I would rather had something, again, just by accident, he activated something, right? Like, he thought about it, but then he didn't, and then he slipped and fell backwards, right? Something that would have made it seem a little bit more like, okay, I can understand why they happen to be on here. Not just, again, that attitude of, I'm going to try so hard to go on this adventure because that's all I want to do. I just want to literally be 7 my whole life. And I get the characters, and that would be the second thing that I could say I dislike. It's just, it was really very easy to pin these characters based off that exposition that Nathan was just saying that person didn't like. But I get that. Like, we got that cleverly put into episode 1 so we could know that. But other than the At Attin stuff we talked about at the beginning, where it's like, okay, this is not typical trope. The 4 characters that we have are typical stuff, right? So we'll see how it goes and all that stuff. And again, I'm excited for it. But really, just that thing about Wim is the thing that pissed me off. I'm just like, okay, I don't like this kid. Hopefully they leave him and he can go off and do whatever.
Right. I don't think they will, though. He feels kind of main character-ish. But
he's got to have room to grow. So
Yeah, I was about to say,
to your
you
point,
just gotta let him cook.
yes. To your point, though, Derrick, I kind of felt the same way about what's Finn Wolfhard's character's name in Stranger Things?
Mike. Yeah.
Mike. I kind of felt the same way about Mike for the first, half of the first season. I'm like, what a whiny
I
little
still feel that way about him.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. Anyways, all right. So the things I disliked the most, in episode 1, I disliked the entire thing about the standardized test setup. Like, I understand what they were going for, because believe me, growing up in the 1980s, which is the whole atmosphere they're aiming for in At Attin, is standardized test at school was like freaking Armageddon for school-age kids. Every year, there was no EOG, but we sure did have to take some sort of weird an acronym of a test. Not even acronym, but just
SATs,
some abbreviation.
CATs, what all that stuff.
Yes, the SATs, the ASVAB, the CSATs, the whatever. Anyway, you pick some random combination of letters and or numbers, and you'd have to take some test. And the teachers and the administrators would build up each of those tests as like, this is the most important test you will ever take. And then by the time I got to 3rd grade, I was all, it's the most important test I'm ever going to take until next year when we have to take another standardized test that may or may not be the 4th grade or 5th grade version of the, CSAB or whatever it was. Or it could just be some new alphabet soup, exam. And I was like, I really don't want Star Wars to be the kind of place where such things do still exist. But then, in our episode of
Look
the
at
podcast
the Empire.
tonight, Nathan has... Well, there's that. But, yes, right. These tests are from the Empire.
And where'd the Empire come from? The Republic. The Great Republic.
That's actually the reason that most of the rebels are there. You notice they're young people. It's because they grew up under the Empire, where they had to take so many standardized tests.
That's it, yes. But Nathan pointed out...
Down with the test!
As Nathan pointed out earlier in this episode of the show, the idea that they're stuck in the past on At Attin is in keeping with this idea that they still do these dumb standardized tests. Anyway, the second thing I disliked was...
To tell you the truth, though, they're still doing tests today now with kids.
Yeah, they are.
I know. But, however, the SAT has become way less important for purposes of getting into college, and I'm glad to see that.
Well, that's because college
anyway,
you have to take out 6 loans that put you into debt forever.
Well, sure. Yeah. But the point is, they don't have as much weight. Now, you still often have to take some or use some equivalent scoring. I'm getting way off track, though. The second thing that I really disliked was it took too long to introduce Nawood. If you're going to have Jude Law be your main dude, or at least a main dude, and you have him for 3 minutes in the first episode, and then a minute and a half in the second episode. But we've only got 8 episodes, right? Do we only have 8 episodes?
Only 8.
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge waste. It's like bringing Giancarlo Esposito on for 1 episode in season 1 of The Mandalorian. Terrible idea. I didn't like that, and I don't like this decision either.
We don't even see his face in the first episode. He's wearing a big mask.
But you knew it was him, though.
Absolutely.
It was him. I'm horrible at this sort of thing.
Gotta let him cook.
Yeah, I get it, son. Wow, look at this.
Also,
Somebody write this down.
Bro's probably asking for a lot of,
Well, yeah, but I mean, that wouldn't be pay per episode. He's got a contract for being a main character. Anyway, but everybody please take note. My son is telling me to be patient.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got
All
it.
right. Question number 3. I'm going to go first this time because I don't want anybody to take my favorite one. Question 3, of course, is what connections did you see to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy? There's a bunch, and I'm going to leave plenty of crumbs on the table for you guys, but I am going to make sure that I eat, or I ate, as they say these days. And that is, it's December, and we got a Star Wars holiday special reference here in the year 2024, because the hologram circus appeared as Neel's brothers and sisters were watching it on the little hologram projector table at Neel's family's house in episode 1. And it is definitively the same footage that Chewbacca's family were watching on their holoprojector table in the Star Wars Holiday Special, but they had to go back and digitally up-res or, increase the resolution for the original holograms from the 1970s, because when you tried to put those holograms from 40-something years ago, nope, that's not right, 50-something years ago, not quite that long, but almost 50 years ago, into modern-day streaming technology on big modern flat panel TVs or even on somebody's phone, it would look like garbage because, well, they were never meant to be up-resed that much back in the 1970s. So they had to redo them. But the good news means that we now have a digital version of that hologram footage that was originally recorded with real circus performers for the holiday special in 1978. So yeah, that was the one that I saw and nearly jumped out of my chair, or did the Leonardo DiCaprio thing. All right, Joseph, did you see any other connections to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
Not really, other than when they got to the spaceport. Just trying to compare all the different Star Wars races and species and stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't really see it too because I wasn't really looking for Easter eggs. I was just sitting there watching it.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're supposed to do. It's only weird old geezers like us that are all like, "Hey, isn't that the thing from Dark Horse comic issue number 27 in 2002?"
Yeah, but
Anyway.
To be fair, I did thought that they were playing space chess at Neel's house. So
It
I mean,
does
it's a lot-
look like one of those chessboards.
It's a D-Jock.
It does look like
board.
a Dejarik board, yeah. But the
But
kids were
it's
basically the
not.
kids were like, "We want to watch Bluey," so
mhm.
All right, Derrick, what connections did you draw to the rest of the Star Wars galaxy?
I'm actually looking it up right now because I can't remember the character's name. Give me a second. So with Jude Law's character, they're coming out with Jod. His helmet there looked just like one of the character helmets from the Young Jedi Adventures that kind of plays the villain.
That's cool.
It is, what is his name? Tabor. Tabor is his name. So I was like, okay. I mean, obviously it can't be him unless if he's one of those weird alien races that lives for 300 some years, which could be the case because he plays a kind of a piratey character in the Young Jedi Adventures. And the only reason I know this, obviously, for our listeners, if you're not long term, is I have a 5-year-old and she does occasionally watch those. And they're just the standard PJ Masks and Spidey Amazing Friend type deal episodes, Paw Patrol things that they have for Star Wars related. So, but anyways, he that mask just looks just like it. And all I was waiting for him to have was some type of electro rod or something like that, but he didn't. Maybe we'll see him get a lightsaber or something now that we know he's a Jedi. But that would be the big thing there. Obviously, we've talked about it too, about Smee being a what type of droid is that now? Like K2SO. Whatever.
Security droid.
Yes. So
Yeah.
So obviously that one there too. So another failed droid that miraculously ended up rewired somehow. But appreciative though that he was the one that held all the navigational and knew how to go places. So he was the good one to take them to take them to the pirate outpost. So, but yeah, otherwise those are my two. There's obviously a lot of stuff that we've talked about too, right? With seeing Hondo Anaka's ship and stuff. So obviously we didn't get that yet. I'm still hoping we get a cameo from the character played live action with a voiceover of Jim Cummings. That would be wonderful.
Yes.
But we'll see.
I bet you it's going to be Adam Sandler.
More Andy Samberg than Adam Sandler at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, to be fair,
all
they're
right,
kind of the same person.
All right, Nathan, what connections did you draw? I'm hoping you're going to say the one that I dropped a hint of about 20 minutes ago.
Well,
and if you don't, I'll remind you. Okay,
I am.
Cool,
I definitely am. But first, I'm going to mention, and I looked this up because I thought I had heard this. I wanted to be sure before I said anything. The circus stuff, it's actually not updated images from the holiday special. They didn't have recordings of that. They had to recreate that scene. So,
I thought they just recreated it by virtue of increasing the resolution.
Nope. Says this is from StarWars.com, so this is straight from the source.
Our as official as you get.
Yeah, our stunt coordinator, Colin Welder. Sorry, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Had been in Cirque du Soleil for many years, so he's the lead dancer. Says Watts. We gave him all the old footage, and it was his job to get a troupe of dancers together, re-choreograph it, and try to recreate it. And then it actually goes on to say that they had no recordings of the music either. So they had to have no usable recordings. So they had to have somebody, I'll just read it here. We couldn't find a copy of the written score, so we had to give it to our composer, Mick. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the last name. Who then had to transcribe it, figure out what instruments they were playing, and then re-record that.
So you mean to tell me that they didn't have any archival footage or scripts or staff music? So they basically got one of those bootlegs that we buy at like Star Wars Celebration, watched the bootleg that had been recorded from 1978, like on CBS, and then like reverse engineered the choreography, the costumes, the music, the instruments. Dude, that's hilarious.
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
Star Wars Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. We don't have any footage except the footage that we all told you guys that you couldn't take.
Yep.
Bootlegs, baby.
So, but that to me makes it even more awesome that they went to all that trouble for something that, like, 3 of us on this podcast are going to get, not many other people in the world.
Yeah.
Joseph
was like, are they playing chess?
Yeah, the average Star Wars fan is probably not going to get that, which is fine. But, man, they put a lot of effort for something that is a kind of a small return in terms of number of people who get it. But as far as the connections that I saw, of course, Neel is not an Ortolan. Somehow. Looks very much like an Ortolan, but is not.
Somehow Neel returned.
But like I said, there's plenty of near human species or different species of human that are somehow still human, despite coming from Naboo or Coruscant or wherever. So whatever. But there's another species here that is a little iffy as to what they are, and that is Brutus, the pirate captain, after they depose Jude Law's character. I think that's what happened between episodes 1 and 2. Brutus is a wolfman. But what kind of wolfman? Turns out there's a few different kinds of wolfmen in Star Wars, and there's 2 big ones, the Defils and the Shistavanans wolfmen. Now, they both first appeared in A New Hope, or rather in Star Wars in 1977 in the cantina. I actually at one point thought they were the same character until the Decipher Star Wars card game came out with a second character that was the other character. And I realized, wait a minute, this isn't just the same guy shot from the front instead of the side. It's 2 different characters that were 2 different species. The
And
Devils.
Nathan, we've got some visual aids to help here, so let me
Good.
bring this in. Yep.
Yeah, so the Devils are usually darker. They have the ability to bend light around them, although they lose that ability as they grow older, and they generally have red eyes. So I thought that this guy was a devil. But according to Wikipedia, Brutus is actually a Shistavanen wolfman, which I
Okay.
find interesting because that's the one that they cut out of the special edition. Now, this confused me greatly because I learned a lot about Star Wars from Decipher's card game, and one of my favorite characters was the Shistavanen Wolfman, and I kept trying to find him in my VHS copy of Star Wars: A New Hope, which was the special edition, and I could never find him. I could not figure out where
you
did
poor
this
soul.
picture
Didn't
come
have the
from?
classic originals.
I did not have the classic originals. I had the special edition that did not have this character's species, but had the other Wolfman, the devil. But Brutus is, as far as Wikipedia can be trusted, a Shistavanen.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we ever get, and I think we will, official character biography files on StarWars.com for Brutus and everybody else in this show, and that might finally clear up what exactly is each of these characters' species.
Yeah,
But yeah, good.
I would have pegged him as a devil.
Yeah, good deep dig there, Nathan. Thanks for pointing out that Neel not being an Ortolan is not the first time and probably won't be the last time that we have a lot of very similar species within the Star Wars galaxy.
But watching the first two episodes, it did make me wonder if part of the reason he's not an Ortolan is because he's on At Attin. And that's, they're kind of cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Which
exactly
does bring me to one more connection that I thought was very funny. The pronunciation of this planet's name is like the, in my opinion, incorrect pronunciation of AT-AT. It is the At Attin planet.
Yes, I dig it. I really, really dig it. And if they come out and say that that was intentional for the in-joke about how you pronounced the all-terrain armored transport, then I'm going to, just mail flowers to Joseph, who's your guy from Spider-Man that you like?
John Watts.
Yeah, I'm going to mail flowers to John Watts every day for a year if he says, we made that joke because of the AT-AT thing. So, yeah, That's pretty hilarious. All right, well, we do have two more questions to discuss, where we will talk a little bit more about At Attin, and maybe a few other things that are burning questions in our minds from these two episodes. And then we might touch on a little of some always specious predictions about what might happen throughout the rest of the season of Skeleton Crew. But before we do those things, we're going to take a short commercial break so we can hear from Kevin about all the other great shows you can listen to here on the Fandom Podcast Network.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Bloody Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville Show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Kevin. So moving on to question number 4. Now, these, of course, 4 and 5 are questions that are specific to these episodes. So unlike our standardized questions that we start out with each time we review some new streaming show. Nathan, I know you just talked a good bit about connections, but I think I'll let you go ahead and start this one as well. Question 4, what kind of ship was this that the kids ended up finding buried there on At Attin that could automatically take off? And not only that, but right itself automatically, because every maneuver it did at the beginning of the liftoff sequence and then leaving the planet, nobody was in the pilot seat. I mean, this was all automatic stuff, and even Smee wasn't really awake yet, per se. What's the deal with this thing? What was its purpose? How did it get there? Why does it exist?
Pirates.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a pirate ship, and I think it's as simple as that. We do have other instances of automatic piloting in the Star Wars universe, the big one being the Phantom Menace. Anakin, stay in that cockpit. Okay, I'm going to stay in this cockpit. Even though the cockpit is going up into a big battle in outer space, and somehow doesn't get shot down by the AAT on the planet that shot down several other ships, that somehow it can't hit a predetermined flight path. But whatever.
The Force was with him, baby. That's all you got to say.
I'll try spinning.
It's a good trick.
Yes, spinning, indeed.
But that automatic piloting took Anakin out into the outer reaches of Naboo space. So I don't see why we couldn't have something similar going on here, where Wim accidentally hit the, yes, please autopilot me out to some predetermined jump point, which was probably some meeting spot where they made their last deal or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I like that theory. Also, you could just say it's a pirate ship, and the ship normally, even another ship that looks like this, it is the same model or whatnot, wouldn't be able to do that. But Nawood and Smee modified it so that it could do that. We know that smugglers and pirates and ne'er-do-wells throughout the Star Wars galaxy love to take some stock ship and then do heavy modifications to personalize, or in their opinion, make it better than it was before. Han Solo, Chewbacca, Lando Calrissian, the list goes on and on. Perhaps even one spice-smuggling Poe Dameron have done their own modifications to various ships to make them cooler or better. This concept is so cool and so heavily ingrained in, frankly, baby boomer sci-fi culture, which is where we got Star Wars from. Even in Star Trek Voyager, there's a whole series of episodes where Tom Paris and Harry Kim take one of the shuttles on Voyager and start tinkering around with it to make the Delta Flyer, the hot rod in space, right? And so this ship could totally have been the same thing. Like maybe that it can take off and land by itself is part of what comes from the factory on Corellia or wherever that model of ship is made. But the whole turning itself right side up and flying to a predetermined spot, even from within the atmosphere of a planet, that might be piratey modifications. And as to why it is there, what its purpose was, I actually think that the thing started out its functional lifespan as a spacecraft as some sort of New Republic military intelligence or law enforcement type ship. Like, it was there out in that area of space to do, like, commando missions or secret raids because it's not an overtly military craft, and it has all these, very much not obvious special capabilities. But then Nawood and Smee and maybe some of the other pirates, Brutus perhaps, they all stole it from some, New Republic James Bond type guy and then started making modifications to it. So that's my personal theory. I'm not sure that we'll get the answer in this episode or in this series. Maybe if we get a season 2, there might be more to it. But anyway, Derrick, what do you think? What kind of ship is this that can do all these crazy things, and why was it there?
I mean, it's just an enhanced Slave 1 fire spray.
You
Because
think so?
that has the ability to basically, you can see it right where it's rocket thrusts just adjust to what it needs to do.
The kind of
So
gyroscopics.
yeah, so it's probably some type of former, like it needs to land type deal craft. I don't think it was necessarily upside down. I think it just was able to bury itself in there. Or to be fair, it could have crash landed. And that's where I
Yeah,
think
that's
it
what I
happened,
thought.
but
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why there's a ravine there.
yeah. So it crash landed as these pirates were trying to find At Attin, and they found it, and unfortunately they didn't survive to tell the tale. But obviously, like I said, it's some type of craft which wants to be able to do some type of surveying or mining or anything like that, where it needs to be able to. And it could be even a military craft. I mean, there's tons of crafts that could have had the ability to come in from deep space and then need to be able to easily access the ground, do what they were doing, and then take back off and go back into space, right? Because I mean, it's not at least like a huge capital starship, right? I mean, it's probably,
Right.
Maybe 3-4 times maybe the size, and maybe not even that big compared to the Millennium Falcon, right? And the Millennium Falcon,
Yeah.
the way it's just almost a complete circle, or if not for sure oval, right? When it's got its thing where it's peaked at the top there, from Solo, from the escape jettison. I mean, it
Right.
has the ability to completely 360 itself. What would that be? Horizontally, however you want to, talk about it. And then the fact that we see it plenty of times gets to do a complete 180 the other way too with its thrusters, right? So obviously
Yeah.
there's a lot of capabilities within Star Wars that allows them to have something that is, it's like I said, it's more unique than we've seen it. But if you think about what we've seen over the years, it wouldn't be surprised that again it has some type of, even to be fair, like, so I'm trying to think, would it be some related to the Phantom Menace when they had the aircrafts deployed down, from there with the battle droids to be able to then deploy the AAT, and the TT whatever number, vehicles that had all the droids and the tanks and everything in it. The fact that we've
Right.
been able to see it have that, right? So
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Joseph, what are your thoughts about this crazy starship that the kids quote unquote stole or just woke up?
Well, when we first like get in the ship and stuff, and we see all like SME or whatever SM-33, all hooked up to the like ship itself, I don't know. I feel like they were trying to transfer some of the droids like into the ship itself to give like the ship its own kind of like consciousness, kind of making the ship like a droid itself, to where it's able to just
Hmm.
do all that stuff. Since they're pirates, like Nathan said, it's a pirate ship. It just does stuff by itself. But since we're in Star Wars, it literally can do stuff by itself.
Yeah. So that'd be like with L337 in the Millennium Falcon in Solo, when they transferred its consciousness into the Falcon, and then later
Yeah, exactly.
C3PO is all like, "Where did the ship learn to talk like this?" Yeah, that
Yeah.
was pretty great. Cool, cool. All right, so and now the fifth and final question for tonight's episode of the podcast. And Derrick, I'll go ahead and let you lead off with this one. Question 5: why does no one believe that At Attin actually exists? Is it like the lost city of Atlantis? Or is it more like Shangri-La? Or some other, crazy hidden city that you can think of in literary?
well, I mean, to be fair, when you have multiple Death Stars running around, any planet could seem to just disappear randomly. So, right. But it's curious again, based off of um, the idea that we have. Like, they're not just the Republic, right? This has been vacant for or hidden for a very, very, very long time. So to Nathan's point earlier, this isn't the New Republic, right? This is probably High Republic that era. We're talking 600, 700 years, maybe more.
Oh, dude, that's a great. If this ties into the High Republic, that'd be awesome.
Like when they cut themselves off, right? Because you could have them be like, and there's got to be again some type of secret behind it, right? So we'll hopefully get that answered. It won't just be some Easter egg left out there for maybe a season 2, and we'll never get it. But overall, though, it's not surprising that a city can just cut itself off if it was already out in the Outer Banks, right, or the Outer Rim, because I'm trying to think where is
No, you're talking to 3 people in North Carolina. You can say Outer Banks. That may as well be the Outer Rim for us. Come on.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think from where was Navarro part of the Outer Rim when we got that with Mandalorian, or is that? I mean, I know it's part of the Republic now, the New Republic, but
yeah, Navarro was part of the Outer Rim when we first met it in the Mandalorian. Later, it became part of the New Republic.
So you have to think this is part of the Outer Rim, right? So when you're talking this, just because it's part of the Outer Rim doesn't mean it's not a difference of, 50,000 light years from the next civilization, right? So there could be a good chance again where it's just, I would say it's probably more Atlantis, where it's like, oh, we have this grandiose technology and we're going to, hide ourselves because we're afraid of being overtaken because we want to be a peaceful society. But then they've cut themselves off from everyone. And then, people are trying to find like, where do they actually have these riches? Is it just because of they've accumulated this wealth, or early on they had the power of something that made them rich? Right. And over the years, though, that power is slowly become outdated. Maybe again, we'll see. Is it a super weapon? It's always a super weapon. But I would definitely say it's more like Atlantis is where I'm seeing the theme, right? Where it's this hidden city, but at one point it was the ruling city, right? So, were they, or were they even from the High Republic era or even the Old Republic era? Were they like citizens that were from one place of, let's say, Coruscant, because everything originated in Coruscant in the center, and they were like castrated out to refugees or something for out there, and then they landed, they populated the city, and then they took with them whatever it was, and then a couple people left, and then they realized, oh, we can't let anybody escape because then they're going to tell people. But in the meantime, that just spreads the story of where they got all this wealth from, and they said, oh, I got it from here. So
Castrated is a whole different process, and we hope that no one's doing that in Star Wars. Anyway,
not in this show.
Not in this show. Sir, not appearing in this film. All right, so well, I like that idea that it's more like the Lost City of Atlantis, and the whole mystery and you can't find us is actually defensive in nature. Like they wanted that to be the case. They did it on purpose. Joseph, what do you think? What's the deal with At Attin? Why does nobody believe it exists? Or they thought it used to exist and they don't think it exists anymore?
Well, I think, I don't know, since they're kind of like exiled away from like everything, and they kind of like set back in the older time with like the older currency and stuff, I think people are kind of still think that they're kind of controlled by like, maybe separatists, but maybe not. Same as how like everything's ran by droids and stuff. It could be a little stretch, but I don't know. That's just what I think, because since everything's ran by all the droids and everything, and there's only really one human I've seen like in charge, like the principal or whatever, or I guess the dean. I don't know, whatever, but.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I like the idea that maybe it's somehow related to the Separatists, even though it's all seemingly part of the Republic. It would be really cool. Actually, I'll save this for when I answer the question. Nathan, I'll let you go next. What's the deal with At Attin? Are we talking Atlantis, Shangri-La, something else? Brigadoon?
No, Atlantis. I'm going with Atlantis.
Okay.
I do think that's where we're going with this. It's a planet that is shrouded in mystery. Some people think it's a myth. It's been gone for a very long time, and people have really short memories in the Star Wars universe. People talked about the Clone Wars as though that was generations ago, when really it was 20 years. But that's just the way things are in Star Wars. When you have planet-killing devices cropping up every few decades,
We're lousy with super weapons.
Differently. Now, I did double check the money that Wim uses. One of the, I don't actually know if this is a pirate, but one of the characters at the bar asks, "Where do you two find an Old Republic credit in mint condition?"
Yeah, right.
So he does specifically call an
It
Old
was
Republic
the
credit.
shopkeep.
It was actually somebody at the bar.
The chef.
Yeah.
No,
a patron
It was
at the bar.
It was a patron at the bar. The chef tried to trick Wim into giving him more credits. It costs at least 5 apiece, and you want to give a tip for good service. And this patron says, "Hey, watch it. He's trying to cheat you." And then reaches over, grabs the thing, and goes, "Where'd you get this mint Old Republic credit?" So they do have credits from the Old Republic, which of course Wim and crew think is just the Republic. But that means that they were cut off sometime after the High Republic, unless the High Republic used the same currency as the Old Republic, which is possible.
Depends which war that had a massive destruction weapon in the meantime.
Not real sure about that. But
he's definitely not paying for his bowl of ramen, space ramen with some Mon Calamari flan.
Right. It is definitely Old Republic credits. So they've been gone for a while, maybe not as long as we might think offhand, but they're cut off. People think they're a myth because nobody can get there, because it's not on any of the star charts. Tell me, which of these stars is at Attin?
Yeah. That's a good answer. My answer is, I'm going to deviate from the majority opinion here on the podcast. It's not Atlantis. It is Shangri-La. And my major piece of evidence is the whole green smoke barrier thing is just like the mists of Shangri-La in that ancient story from Asian history. And so I think that is where we get this idea. I think the green barrier mist thing is supposed to make us evoke that image in our mind, and also because the pirates all act like it's paradise, that everybody would want to go there. And if you got there, you'd never want to leave. That was the whole thing about Shangri-La, is that you'd never want to leave. Of course, if you do leave from Shangri-La, the mist closes around it, and it's really hard for you to find your way back. In fact, you might spend the rest of your life trying to get back to that paradise that you were once in. And so I think that is going to be an overarching theme. But I like this concept that we've come up with here, or maybe you guys were all really well aware of it already, but I just became aware of it, that it's Old Republic credits, and that they might not even know that the Clone Wars happened. And it
or any wars.
But maybe they, or any wars, but maybe they do. And they're like the purified form of the Republic that some of the separatists wanted to get back to, because that was when they felt the Republic was at its best, before it got mired in the bureaucracy and the corruption, right? Some say former Jedi who was really enamored of the concept of the Republic, but hated the current execution of it. So he became a separatist, and he was well known for being rich and well off and very cultured, and perhaps even had access to technologies that could set apart or cloak a particular planet, where he could store vast amounts of riches of Old Republic credits. Someone who might be more like royalty, say Count Dooku. So if this turns out to be a separatist sort of, installation that was hidden by Count Dooku as a prime example of what the Republic was supposed to be, and they've got a bunch of money because we know that there was the treasure of Count Dooku, that'd be a really cool way to tie this all together. I almost like that better than the idea that it's stemming from the High Republic. But a live action connection to the High Republic would be really great too. So yes, I'm going with Shangri-La, set up by and then hidden from the rest of the galaxy by Count Dooku.
And Jude Law's his son.
Well, now I want that to be the case. No, I don't know if Jad Nawood would be his son, but I do get the feeling that Nawood is a former Jedi, or was on his way to becoming a Jedi.
Could have
because
been
we
his
see him
apprentice.
use the Force.
Well,
Could have been, yes.
We see him move the keys.
Oh, you think there might be some chicanery?
I almost question if there is some chicanery, if he's just trying to fool the children and somehow did like a wire trick. And maybe he wasn't even a prisoner there. The pirates just came up with a plan of, we'll get them to trust this one guy.
Yeah, but that beginning scene.
Don't think about that part too hard.
Don't think about it too hard. It makes sense if you don't think about it.
At him, so.
Yeah. I need you to not think about it for this theory to make sense.
Threw him into the dungeon because they were mad at him, and he is using the Force. My major question about it was, if he could use the Force to get their keys anytime, why did he be there as long as he did? And I think Nathan and I talked about this. The reason being, he didn't have a ship to escape with until the kids showed up, and now he knows there's a ship there. Maybe he even knows that Smee is there.
But if they're on the outpost, though, he could just steal a ship.
You would think that, but maybe
he could use a Jedi mind trick.
Well,
maybe he doesn't know how to do that.
I do legitimately think he's not that good of a Jedi. I think he probably never finished his training.
He flunked the Jedi standardized test.
Exactly. but this could be how he survived the Jedi Purge. He wasn't a Jedi because he just dropped out, and he's never
on any role.
Yeah, he never made it beyond Padawan status, or maybe never even made it to Padawan status. So he knows the basics. But isn't even as well trained as, say, Ezra is in Rebels after he gets some training from canon.
Probably, because most likely he could have been he got accepted to the Jedi Academy, but on his way in is when the purge happened. So he just never made it, and he's like, well, he just shows up, and he's like, he turns his I've been accepted into Jedi Temple, turns the shirt inside out, and then just walks past everyone.
I've been denied.
So he's like, we're in for orientation. Orientation for what? We're raiding the Jedi Temple. Orientation for Miners Club. So
totally. I'm here to learn how to play Dungeons and Dragons.
I can't believe you said Shangri-La when you could have said Shakare.
I should have said Shakari, the galactic barrier. Anyway, I could have said that. I should have said
Great barrier.
That's it. I'm deleting this recording. We're going to start the podcast over again so that I can fix that one mistake. I'm the George Lucas of podcasting.
It's time for bed.
I'm going to But before we go to bed, we got to do, the special edition of episode 155 of What a Piece of Junk, the Star Wars podcast. Anyway, we got to do Derrick's favorite part of the show, and that is, what Star Wars t-shirt are we wearing this week? I shall go first because I'm super happy to have dug out my Grogu shirt. He's green and cute, and he says, I'm all ears on a green background. One of my favorite Mandalorian-related pieces of merchandise.
Now officially
Joseph.
The second cutest character in Star Wars.
The second behind Neel, I assume?
Yeah.
No.
Grogu is printing them money. Neel is cute. He'll make a shirt. Don't you worry. But
we have a divided cockpit of the Drunken Gungan here now. Team Neel, Team Grogu. Joseph, what do you got for a Star Wars shirt? I mean, obviously you're not wearing one. You got Deadpool and Wolverine there. Great shirt, though.
Since it's getting close to that time of year, I figured why not whip out this bad boy. It's my Darth Vader Christmas sweater. And he's telling you to have a holly jolly Sithmas.
I find your lack
of
cheer disturbing.
My favorite variation of Star Wars line from Vader for Christmas is, "You don't know the power of the Yuletide." No one? Anybody? Crickets? All right, fine, whatever. Derrick, what do you got?
I was going to tell you first, though. I am not Team Grogu or Team Neel. I'm Team Teak.
Yes, Teak. I was so excited to see not only a Star Wars holiday special reference in Skeleton Crew, but a Ewok Adventures Caravan of Courage reference
I
with
really
Teak.
thought that's where you were going to go with your connection to the larger Star Wars galaxy, to the point that I forgot you hadn't when it got to me.
Yeah.
Not to mention it myself.
I didn't want to take it from you guys, so we got to get Eric Walker back on the show to ask him his thoughts about that. But yeah, that's great, Derrick. You got the Punta Eve Classic. Now this is pod racing T-shirt.
But why am I wearing
Sebulba.
it? Why am I wearing it?
Because he says that when he's in the N1 Starfighter, and we talked about that in this episode with the autopilot. Is that really why you're wearing it?
Well, he's wearing it because Wim says wizard.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
it's so wizard. Yep. A Phantom Menace reference and a Kidster reference, for crying out loud, which you don't get many of those.
Mm-mm.
All right. Good dig there, Derrick. Good dig. Nathan, what you got? We know that you're actually wearing a Star Trek T-shirt under there, but
well, you didn't have to tell everybody, but that is true. Yes, I am wearing a Star Trek T-shirt underneath here.
That he won at one of the nationals I hosted.
Yes,
that's right.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought you were wearing a Grinch onesie.
Wow. I don't have any onesies at all, except for
sure you don't.
Yeah. Okay.
But instead of a T-shirt, I have with me a jacket that I bought from Her Universe this past week. This is a Luke Skywalker jacket. It is the style of jacket that he wore in Empire Strikes Back on Dagobah and Cloud City, and it has not just the Luke patch on the front and not just the style, but it's got the Phoenix on the back.
Ooh,
got
cool.
the rebel symbol there. I like this jacket because it's nice and understated. It's now I do love my Wookiee jacket, my Chewbacca jacket, and it gets a lot of comments. But man, you can see me from a mile off. This jacket I can blend in a little bit. It's a Star Wars jacket, but it's not a super loud one. So I like that about it. It is a little bit thinner, but this week's supposed to be a little bit warmer, so I plan to wear it quite a bit.
So
you can pass yourself off as a normie.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, is that what Luke actually wore? Because I feel like if he was trying to hide from the Empire, having the Rebel Phoenix on his back would make him a big bullseye.
Yeah. Okay. So the Rebel Phoenix he didn't have, and it didn't actually say Luke on his.
He might as well have a glowing arrow over his head. This is the main character. I'm the one you're looking for.
Vader,
Son
I'm
of Darth
right
Vader. Wait a minute. Hold on. Why did you say that?
Well, it's a really great jacket, Nathan. And if you guys out there listening to us want to get your own What a Piece of Junk t-shirt, or any t-shirt from the fine shows here on the Fandom Podcast Network, please hit up our store over at tpublic.com and just put Fandom Podcast Network into the search bar, and you'll see t-shirts, mouse pads, coffee mugs, all kinds of merchandise to help support the fine shows that you hear here on the FPN. Yes, just like that coffee mug that Derrick has in his shot. And I'm sure that coffee tastes out of this world when you're drinking it from a What a Piece of Junk coffee mug. And or you could get the Wookiee cookie coffee from Bones. I actually really enjoyed my Bones coffee, the Tatooine tiramisu, or I think it was desert tiramisu. Anyway, I drank it all. I'm out of it. So Twin Sun tiramisu. Thank you very much. I'm going to have to order some more. I may get some whole bean so I can do my own grind. But this is not a coffee podcast. And if I start talking about that, I'll keep getting way off track.
But if Bones wants to endorse us, we're willing to listen.
Yeah, if Bones wants to sponsor the show, I will talk about coffee for 20 solid minutes. And you could hear all about it on the Fandom Podcast Network. And speaking of the Fandom Podcast Network, Nathan, why don't you let folks know where they can find us out here on the interwebs?
Absolutely. You can find us anywhere your pods are cast. That includes fpnet.podbean.com, which is our master feed on the Podbean app. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitchers, one Stitcher. There's only one. Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and my favorite, YouTube, because I'm old. You can find us on Facebook at What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. You can email us at whatapieceofjunkpod@gmail.com. On Twitter/X, we are at What Wars. And on Instagram, you can find the entire Fandom Podcast Network at Fandom Podcast Network. Yes, we don't get points for creativity, but you can find us. And if you do find us on any of these platforms, but particularly on the Apple Podcast, we would love for you to leave us a review. Whatever you feel is appropriate, of course, but we love the 5-star reviews. And Derek, can you tell us a little bit about why we love those reviews?
Yes. So we like any type of review, but 5 stars are the best because, one, it helps the algorithm. And even though we're not in an analog world anymore, we're in a digital world, we like to be able to have others listen to us. But the main reason is because we are going to be reviewing the next 6 episodes of Skeleton Crew. And to do that, we might not be on the Drunken Gungan. We might be on our speeder bikes, and our speeder bikes are without the power converters. So if you leave us 5-star reviews, we can get updated power converters, get our bikes fixed, and we can be trotting along as we continue the review of Skeleton Crew for the next 6 more weeks.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for joining us, everyone. I want to say a special thank you to my son, Joseph, for jumping in on this episode of the podcast. He was not a huge Acolyte fan, so you didn't hear much out of him, but I can't promise he'll be a standard feature, but we very much enjoyed hearing what you had to say, son, so thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having me. It was a good time.
Yeah, all those pirates might be obsessed with the treasure of At Attin, but you are my treasure, Joseph, and I'm very glad you got to join us. So, for
Don't
everybody
tell
else
Matthew.
out there... Yeah, don't tell your brother. It's all right. He never listens to this show. So for everybody else out there, please always remember to respect each other and always respect each other's fandom. All right, Nathan, punch it.